Okay, thank you guys for joining. Today we're going to talk about how to do a rental, kind of from start to finish, and how to work with a rental tenant, right? Again, this is from the tenant side. This is when you have a lead you're working with, when you have, someone that you're working with. Sorry, I mean myself. That someone that you have that you're working with to help them find an apartment, right? And the biggest thing that I want to say in all of this, and again, we'll go through the paperwork, we'll go through kind of what you should do in advance, is that any questions that you have about the application process is always going to come to you from the listing agent or the listing management company, right? So any questions that you have, you want to defer to that. That's kind of one of the biggest things here, because again, you're helping the person get the documents together. You're helping them find apartments, see apartments, and things like that. But when you get to the point where you're actually applying for the apartment, you can always defer to the listing agent for any questions that you have, because they're in control of the process, what's needed for the owner, the management company, whoever it is. Again, just a couple of reminders. When we're talking about rentals in New York, we're talking about three distinct types of properties, right? We're talking about what we would call a rental building. That's a building where the entire building, or everything but the ground floor or the first couple floors, is rental units, right? This can be owned by an individual landlord. The building that we're in right now is a rental building, where there's commercial units on the ground floor, and then there are rental units above. Well, our office is here, but then above us, owned by one person, one family, whatever it is. Again, it can be anything from a one-unit rental building, let's say a single family in Queens, all the way to a 1,000-unit rental building in Manhattan, whatever it is, right? We also have rentals in condo buildings and in co-op buildings, in cooperative buildings, right? And in that case, what you have to remember is that it's a two-step process, right? Again, the condo owner can rent out their unit, but usually that rental tenant also needs to be approved. And in the case of a condo, it's kind of like a rubber stamp by the board, the condo board of the building. Or in the case of a co-op, they need to be approved. And usually that's actual approval by the co-op board, right? And so the thing to keep in mind is that if you have someone who is looking to move very quickly within a couple days, you're probably going to want to look at rental buildings only. The condo process usually takes 2 to 4 weeks. The co-op process usually takes 4 to 6 weeks. And so again, if you have someone who's looking to move right away, you probably want to focus on rental buildings. Now, one more thing to remember in all of this are that there are 3 different types of listings, right? There are exclusive listings, and that is where the owner or management company gives one person or one company like Weichert the ability to advertise those listings, right? Those are not ones that you can advertise on the open listing websites or on Streeties or anything like that. There are limited listings where there might be a list that goes out every day or every couple days from the management to a select group of people, right? People who are on their list or specific brokerage firms. Maybe Weichert and 1 or 2 other brand X companies have that right to advertise it. And the third is open listings. And these are ones that, like the name designates, are open. These tend to be larger management companies that give their list to anyone who wants to rent it. And again, they can all have the right to advertise or the right to do specific things. Again, it's important to think about these things, right? Because when you're working with a rental tenant, usually an exclusive listing will have a fee that is set by the exclusive agent. Usually open listings will be a collect your own fee, or sometimes the owner will pay us the fee, right? And so when you're working with a rental tenant, you have to keep in mind what the fee is going to be, which again, with an exclusive listing, it's going to be up on the listing, right? Usually on OLR or on LIBOR, it will say what the fee is, right? 15% of a year's rent or 7.5% to outside broker. Those 2 things mean the same thing. That means that your tenant, the person that you're working with, is paying a 15% fee for the rental of the apartment. 7.5% goes to the listing agent, 7.5% goes to Weichert for you being the tenant's agent, right? But they're paying that fee. On an open listing, it might say collect your own fee. And that's where we can charge the rental tenant maybe a 1-month fee, right? Or we can try to charge 15%. Again, that is collect your own fee or open listing means that it is not being designated by the listing agent and stuff like that. So again, what we're going to be going over is the rental process for when you have a rental tenant. This process is different based on, again, the different companies that you have or the different companies that are actually putting up the rental and things like that. But what we're going to be going over today is really a general process of what it looks like. So again, for me, when I have someone that I'm working with, and when I have someone that I'm going to be helping rent an apartment, I always start our relationship by having a consultation with them, right? And during that consultation, kind of similar to the buyer consultation, what you want to talk about is a few things. You want to talk about what the process is of working with you, and what the fees associated with working with us are. We want to make sure that they have the required documentation together, especially in a rental market like we're in right now, right? Something goes on the market and there are lines of people out the door to rent that apartment. So it's very important to let the clients know that they should have all of this documentation together in order to be able to put in an offer as soon as they see something. And during this consultation, I always go through the forms that need to be signed, right? And we'll talk about these down the road. These are the tenant registration fee agreement, which discloses to the tenant what the fee is or what the fee could be up to. It's the agency disclosure form, and it's also the fair housing disclosure form. I also usually tell people that some brokers require COVID forms. Again, these don't really exist that much anymore, but it is something that could be asked for. So again, what I'm going to be talking about right now is the general rental documentation that many landlords ask for. In giving you this, it's important to have a caveat that every management company is different, every landlord is different in what they ask for. And that's why at the beginning of this presentation, I kind of mentioned that you always want to defer to the listing agent or the management company for what they require, right? Again, in Manhattan, we have something that is called the 40 times monthly qualification guideline. What that means is that for someone to qualify for an apartment, right? For someone to be quote unquote financially qualified for an apartment, they need to make 40 times the monthly rent in their yearly income, right? And we usually look at their offer letter or their employment letter to see this, right? So for a $2,000 a month apartment, most landlords will want to see that the tenant makes at least $80,000, right? If it's a $3,000 a month apartment, they want to see if they make $120,000, right? And so it's good to talk to your clients at the beginning about what their income is. And again, if it's two people, you can kind of put that together. If they don't qualify for that, they'll probably need to use what's called a guarantor or use one of the guarantee services that's out there in New York. A guarantor usually applies like a tenant and needs all the same information. And they're basically signing saying, hey, if Joe doesn't pay his rent, I'm going to pay the rent, right? And in order for someone to act as a guarantor, most landlords want them to make 80 times the monthly rent, right? So that means for a $2,000 apartment, they want to see if they make $160,000 to act as a guarantor. We can talk about this more down the road, but the standard, quote unquote standard, or a normal application package will have an application. Again, there's an example of our application in the Weichert Properties shared Google Drive. They'll want an employment letter, which is a letter on company letterhead stating their salary, position, length of employment, any bonus, that's signed by their boss or by HR at the company. They'll want to see the last 2 to 3 months of pay stubs, right? And again, if they get direct deposit, they usually have an ADP or other payment processing account they can pull out the PDFs for. They'll want to see the last 1 to 2 years of tax returns. So again, something they should have prepared. 2 to 3 months of bank statements or investment statements. Again, if they have, if they don't make a lot of money, but they've got a ton of money in the bank, a lot of landlords will look at that. A copy of their photo ID, and they'll want to be prepared to pay a application fee or credit check fee. Now, if it is a rental building, right? And again, this is only for rental buildings. The maximum application fee that can be charged per the New York state law is $20, right? So if someone's applying for an apartment, it's $20 per person to apply. This regulation does not apply to condos and co-ops. The owner of the condo and co-op can only require the $20 for the credit check fee, but the condo or co-op themselves can have higher application fees, right? Some of them have hundreds of dollar application fees. That is okay. That's not a problem. Okay. So again, I have a conversation on the phone, over Zoom, on FaceTime, whatever it is with the people and go over what documentation they're going to need, right? I also talk about the fee. I say, have you worked with a broker in New York before? No? If not, okay, great. Well, there is usually a brokerage fee in New York. That fee can vary from 1 month's fee all the way to 15% of a year's rent, which is 1.8 months fee. Again, that is usually in this market paid by the tenant, which is you. And again, if they say at that point, hey, I can only pay 1 month, and you say, great, not a problem. And only send them properties where you can charge them 1 month, right? Don't send them exclusive properties and stuff like that. Again, after I have that consultation and kind of go over everything and get a sense of it, I then send them an email with all of the documentation in an email so that they have a good sense of it, not only what I went over the phone or over Zoom with them, but also in an email, right? And again, this is what I say, Dear X, and again, this will all go to you guys. You'll get this, the slides and stuff like that. I just want to send over a list of the documentation that most landlords use, as well as a sample of our company rental application. I ask that you complete the packet so we have it together as a PDF that we can give to anyone or any property that you find. Most other agents will ask me for a general financial picture as well, so we ask for this up front, right? That's just saying, hey, it's good for me to have this so we know what you can qualify for, so we know what's needed, right? And this is what they need: the employment letter or a CPA letter if they're self-employed, 2 to 3 months bank statements, pay stubs, tax returns, photo ID or passport. And if they say, hey, I don't want to give you this until we're ready, say, not a problem, right? You don't have to get this, but have this all ready, because if we see an apartment that you want, especially in this market, you will need to apply on the spot. So if you're taking time to get all this together, you will probably lose the apartment, right? And that's what's happening. I can tell you the apartments that I've rented over the last couple of weeks, I get multiple applications the first day I show it, and it goes for over the asking price, right? And by preparing people for that market, it's you doing your job by helping them really take advantage and to be successful in this environment that we're in. So again, in this same email, I say the brokerage fee varies from apartment to apartment. Some landlords are paying my fee, which again, if it's an OP listing, an owner pays listing, that could be the case. In this market, I would probably take that out because almost no one is paying that. If there is one paid by the tenant, it ranges from 1 month's rent to 15% of a year's rent, right? And again, I also caveat with this last paragraph, right? Landlords will require first month's rent, security deposit, and the brokerage fee at lease signing, right? And again, if they say, well, when does lease signing happen? You say, it's usually the day after you've applied and been accepted, right? So it's a quick turnaround. Letting people know that they need first month's rent, a 1 month security deposit, and a fee, which is up to 1.8 months. So basically, they usually need about 3 to 4 months rent in the bank, ready to pay as soon as they find something. These will have to be certified checks. The big checks that you get directly from the teller at the bank, right? Clarify that. That's so important. If someone's coming in from California, they don't have a bank here, right? If they're not using Chase or Wells Fargo or one of the big banks, it's important that they know that they're going to have all this money ready to go, or wire transfer. But rent can be paid by personal checks or direct deposit after you move in. All the best, your name, right? Tell them all of this up front, because what you're doing is you're helping saving yourself time down the road for them not to be prepared, which will make you miss out on apartments, or for them to say, oh, I didn't know there was a fee, right? You not only told them on the phone, but you've also sent them this as an email, right? So I would copy and paste this email, change around a little bit so it's in your wording, but have this ready so that you send this out to every single person that you're potentially going to be renting an apartment to. Again, after you've gathered the documents and gotten the disclosure form signed, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit, you want to use the criteria of the client to set up showings, right? What are the big things that you want to find out what they're looking for, right? What size apartment are they looking for? Is it a studio, 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom? What locations are they open to, right? Do they want to be in Midtown East? Do they want to be in Carroll Gardens? Again, do they have any pets, right? Many landlords do not accept pets. Some only accept cats. Some only accept dogs up to 25 pounds. So if they have a pet, get all that up front, right? brokers will usually ask for information about your clients, right? And that's why it's important to know before you go to set up appointments a little bit more about them and their situation, right? What do they do? What is their income, right? Again, rental brokers can be extremely flaky. Let's change the stereotype. And again, you need to have these three forms signed at your first appointment or before you take them out, right? And all these forms are available for you in the Google Drive. You can download them and fill them out and send them to the client. You can fill them out and then send them over DocuSign, right? And the three forms are the tenant registration fee agreement, the agency disclosure form, and the fair housing anti-discrimination form, right? The tenant registration fee agreement fulfills our obligation under fair housing to tell people what our maximum fee is, right? And here at White Group Properties, our maximum fee is 15% of a year's rent for a rental. Again, that doesn't mean that they have to necessarily pay that, right? You could be showing apartments where it's a 1 month fee or showing apartments where it's an OP and the owner's paying you. But we have to disclose at the beginning in writing what our maximum fee is if we're taking a client to see multiple apartments. The agency disclosure form lets your client know that your fiduciary responsibility is to them, right? And the fair housing anti-discrimination form lets them know what their protected classes are under fair housing and how they can report you or any other broker that they deal with if they feel like, or an owner, if they feel like their fair housing rights are being violated, right? So again, if you're not familiar with these forms, review them so that you can explain them to anyone who asks you about it. And again, we'll get into those forms specifically a little bit later, but we're going to talk about the next part, right? So next, we're going to go view apartments, right? This is the fun part. This is where you get to go out and show apartments and things like that. So where do you find rental apartments to show? So number one is OLR, right? For anyone who's a member of Revenue, you have OLR access. You can find apartments on there. You want to go to search, you pick your borough and you pick rentals, right? And you can do the criteria, you can put it in, do the search, and a bunch of stuff will come up. You can find listings on StreetEasy. And when you're on StreetEasy, make sure you're signed in as an agent, but you can find listings to show. Zillow, Realtor.com, Apartments.com, RentHop, all places where you can find apartments. If you're looking outside of the city in Long Island, you're probably going to want to use Zillow, Realtor, Apartments.com, and Live, right? So again, what you're going to do is you're going to reach out to the listing agent and set up the appointment. Sometimes that's a management company where you go and pick up keys. Sometimes you get access from the tenant. Sometimes you're meeting the other broker there, right? And so you always defer to the listing agent or to OLR or LIBOR for the description of how to show the property. And what you want to do usually is set up a couple back to back. You know, I usually leave about half an hour in between, so you have about 10 minutes to see the apartment, time to get to the next one, right? And again, you can set up appointments to see a number of apartments, right? And when you're there, you always want to be on time, if not a little bit early. You don't want to talk too much, right? This is for them to see the apartment and see what they think of it. Know the answers to common questions, right? Where's the closest subway or city bike or transportation? Where's the closest grocery store? What are the amenities nearby, right? And so always take some time to familiarize yourself with where the apartments you're showing are and what's nearby. You always want to get the client's reaction, right? And after you leave an apartment, and if you're walking to a second apartment, you can say, hey, what did you think of that one, right? You don't have to be pushy, apply for this right now. But if they say, hey, I really like that, you should say, great, we should really apply for this right now. It only costs you $20 to apply, and that way you won't miss out on it in case there's multiple applications. Always afterwards, you also want to follow up with the broker or the management company with feedback, right? This is one of the things that differentiates a good broker from a great broker, or a good agent from a great agent, right? Always give feedback, right? Hey, Joe, thank you so much for showing the apartment. Unfortunately, it was too small for Maurice, but I'll keep it in mind for other clients, right? And he'll be like, great, thank you. By doing that and being nice, right? Think about it. If you're nice to the management companies, if you're nice to the other brokers, they're going to be more likely to help you out down the road and go out of your way. And what I can tell you is that many of our agents have gotten into very good relationships with management companies, right? You'll see that there are certain brokers who have a lot of listings in certain neighborhoods. You'll see that there are a lot of brokers and management companies who have bigger buildings. And by getting into a relationship with them, you might have better access. They'll go out of their way for you, or you might get an application approved that someone else might not. And so be nice to everyone, not only your customers and your clients, but every other broker out there. And I can tell you, this has paid off dividends down the road. I've used this example before, but I did a rental with another agent. It went really well. We were nice to each other. She had a listing. My client who was looking to buy wanted to get into that listing. She's like, oh, unfortunately, we took it off the market. I said, listen, This is an all cash buyer. This is perfect for him. Please, can we get in? She's like, you know what, Jason, I like you. I'll get you in. She got us in. We got an accepted offer. We got the apartment before it actually went back on the market, right? And that's only because I was nice to her 2 years before on a rental deal that we did. So think about that, right? Although we're in competition with other brokers for listings, for exclusives and things like that, we also have to collaborate with them because most deals are done with one agent on either side. So always be good. Always follow up with them and say, thank you for the showing. Thank you for your time. It wasn't for my client, but I'll keep it in mind for other people. Okay, so let's say you find the apartment and they really like it and you're going to go for it, right? Always defer to the listing agent for the application requirements, right? This is important. Always defer to the listing agent for the application and requirements. Because every brokerage company, every management company, every landlord is different, they might ask for different things. And again, that package that I showed you before is what I would call a typical package, right? That's what I ask for the exclusives that I have with my landlords and things like that. If you see an apartment that looks great, right? And I can tell you, and Christine Farku, who's one of our top rental agents, can tell you, is always ask for the application in advance. If it looks perfect for your client, even if you haven't seen it, ask for the application in advance. They can actually put everything together. And in this market, they can always apply for the apartment without seeing it, right? Many landlords won't take sight unseen applications, but they can apply for it with the intention of seeing it that day or later that day, right? So I always ask for the application or to have it handy before taking the client out, right? Management companies will usually always give it to you. They might say, here's the link or here's where you would apply. Not a problem. Other brokers, you could say, hey, what is required for this apartment? Is it the standard documentation package or what do you need? And sometimes they'll let us use our package. Sometimes they want different stuff. But again, think about the advantage that you have. You already have the application that you can immediately send to your client if they want to apply, right? You should already have most of the documentation together. Maybe there's one other thing. Maybe they want a landlord reference letter or something. But you probably have everything together so that you can put together the package and send it over right away. Again, usually credit checks are run by the listing agent, their firm, or the management company. If they need us to do a credit check, we can, right? Ritalin can do it. We need, oh, I put Patty in here, it's Ritalin now. We collect $20 cash or certified check for us to run the credit, right? And we can run it, it's not a problem. From 9 to 5, Ritalin can do it for you and we get it back almost immediately. What they need to do for us to run the credit check is to fill out our application and then you send that to Ritalin, you collect the funds and give it to me or to her next time you're in the office. So again, they get approved, great. The next thing that's gonna happen is the lease signing and then scheduling of the move-in, right? The leases are prepared by the listing agent or management, right? So in this case, we are working with the rental client, so we don't have to prepare any lease, right? It's great, you don't have to do much. You should review to confirm the terms are correct, right? And remember, there are certain riders that are needed for all leases. The lead paint, the bed bug, the window guard, the sprinkler, and the stove knob riders, right? Those should all be included. If they're not, just remind the listing agent that they need to be in there. Again, when they sign the lease is when they provide the certified checks and everything like that, right? It's not when they move in, right? It's when they sign the lease. They pay the brokerage fee. Again, 1 month, 15% of a year's rent, 7.5% to us, 7.5% to the other broker. These are all bank certified checks they get from the bank. And they pay that at the lease signing, right? You don't say, oh no, you can pay me next week. No, we collect it all at the lease signing. If you are doing an application to a condo or a co-op, right? It's a two-step process. Again, they apply to the owner approves them, they sign the leases. You as their agent hold all the checks for the brokerage fees, for the owner's move-in and security, first month's rent and security deposit, and we hold those. The leases are signed. That's when the property is taken off the market. And at that point, you do the board package, whatever documentation is needed by the building, you submit. Those checks for us and for the landlord are not released until you have condo or co-op board approval, right? So it's a two-step process. They apply to the owner approves them, they sign leases, you hold all the checks, and then they apply to the building. If you have questions about that, let me know and we can go over it again down the road. So again, let's just say it's a rental, everything's done, right? You get your check. You need to submit everything to Ritalin to get paid and for it to be processed, right? So again, the documentation is the transaction form for rentals, which is in the the Google Drive, the first and the signature page of the lease, the agency disclosure form, and the fair housing form, right? And again, if it's a brokerage fee you're collecting from the tenant, we need the copy of we need the check. If we're billing someone else for it, you put together an OP invoice and we can go over that separately. Okay, so again, after the deal, right? You're done, you were paid, great. What you want to do is make sure that this becomes a customer and a client for life and someone that's going to refer you. What I can tell you is that my rental business, when I first started in this business, was doing one rental and doing such a good job for that tenant that they referred me to their friends and family, and my business grew, right? So again, follow up after the deal. How did the move-in go, right? You know when they moved in, right? All of the coordination for keys, for utilities, all that usually goes through the listing agent at that point, but you can confirm, hey, how's everything going, right? Add them to your My Whitecard account, right? And put in the dates for yourself, right? Put in a reminder to yourself to follow up with this rental tenant 4 months before their lease ends, right? If they're signing a lease in June, you want to follow up with them in February or March to see how things are going, right? Are they going to renew their lease next year? I always get my tenants a move-in gift, right? Something small, bottle of wine, keychain, something like that, right? Something that differentiates me from other people. I also ask them for a review. If they came from RentHop, I do it there. If they came from anywhere else, I do it on Zillow, right? Just, hey, would you mind, doing a quick review for me? Jason was great. Thank you so much. Boom. That's it. It takes them 2 seconds to do it. And again, think of them as people that are going to help you build your business, right? Because you did a great job for them. So you ask them for referrals, right? Follow up with them in the future. They're a great source to help you with everything down the road. And that's basically it, right? That is the rental process. It's a pretty quick thing. It can all happen in one day, right? You can get a client and rent them something that day. Usually it's within a day or two. So this is really quick money for you. It's a nice way to get things going, right? So with that, I'd love to open up to any questions about the process, and then I'm going to go into the documentation and requirements. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay.
Jason.
Oh, Maria.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. Can I ask client to ask for an offer for a rental or not?
I'm sorry?
Some clients, they ask for an offer, to put an offer for the rental.
Yeah.
Can do that?
Yeah, you can always put in an offer. On the application, instead of the asking rent, you'd put in the offer. Depending on how long it's been on the market and if it's overpriced or not. Yes, you can always put in an offer. I would say in this market, if anything, I'm seeing my rentals go for over the asking price.
Yes, that's why it's too expensive, and they asking for an offer. Put an offer.
If it's been on the market and they want to put in an offer, great, put in an offer. If it just came on the market today, you probably can't put in too low of an offer. An offer and a rental is probably between $50 and $100 off. Again, not to say anything they want to put in, you present, but make sure you're presenting it with the full application package, right? You don't want to just send over, hey, would the owner take, if it's a $3,000 apartment, you don't want to just send an email saying, hey, would the owner take $2,900? No, you say, hey, my client is offering $2,900. Here's all the documentation you asked for.
So I should ask it first for the.
You should ask for the application and get everything together and submit an offer with the application.
But I should ask them if they accepted the offer or not, right?
No, you should not. You should put in the offer.
Oh, okay. All right.
With all the documentation that they're asking for.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk about where the documentation is and the requirements that you need for documentation to be signed, right? So you guys should all have access to the shared Google Drive in your Google Drive linked to whatever Gmail account you've given me. If you don't have it, send me an email with whatever Gmail account you want it shared with, and I will share it with you. It has to be a Gmail account. So you're going to go into your Google Drive. You go to Shared with Me and the Whitecard Properties files, right? And there's a ton of documentation in there. There's a full rental package that's in there with all the rental documents that you could possibly need, right? And so again, we're going to talk about the 3 forms that you need to have signed and filled out anytime you're working with a rental tenant and helping them find an apartment. The first one is the tenant registration and fee agreement, right? And this does 2 things. Number 1, the front page of this helps you get all the information from the client that you're working with, the customer that you're working with, and when they're looking to move, right? What they do, what their income is. Again, if they have roommates, to get all the contact information about everyone. You also ask them if they've seen any properties in advance. And the reason that we ask this is so you're not showing them stuff that they've already seen, right? The back side of this form on the right here is our fee agreement, right? And what this states, and it's important, and please listen carefully, is that under fair housing, we have to state what our maximum brokerage fee is, right? And Weichert Properties' maximum brokerage fee for a rental is 15% of a year's rent, period, right? Our max fee is 15% of a year's rent. They have to agree that the max fee could be 15% of a year's rent and sign this form, right? And at the bottom of the form here, it gives you spaces to put in what you've seen with them. And again, what this form does is it protects you in case you show them the property, they then want to go rent it without you. This form will hold up in court and allow us to collect the fee from them, right? What this fee also allows us to do is in the comment section, put in if the fee is going to be less than 15%, right? You might be working with a client who says, I don't want to pay a 15% fee. That's okay. And they might say, I don't want to sign this. It says 15%. What you say to them is that this is for up to 15% of the year's rent. And in this form, anything that we see with a lower fee, I'm going to write in, right? So again, if you only want to see 1 month fee places, great, right? I'm going to put 123 Main Street, 1 month fee in the comments, right? And you initial it. 222 4th Avenue, 1 month fee, whatever it is, right? And so we have to disclose to them, and you can tell them, by law, we have to disclose to you what our maximum fee is for a rental, and it's 15%. But many of the properties I'm going to show you, or if in the case they only want to do a 1 month fee rental, all of the properties I show you are going to be 1 month fee. That's it, right? And so again, if they have an objection, that's how you can get around it. The second fee that you need to have signed, the second form you need to have signed is the agency disclosure form, right? And again, at the beginning of this, it says this is not a contract. And if they say, well, what is this, right? Well, this form tells you what my relationship to you is, right? In this case, this form is provided me by, you put your name in here, right? Of Weichert Properties. I'm representing the tenant as, you'll check off there, the tenant's agent, right? And that's all you have to put in, right? Under we, you put the client's name or names, you have them sign and date it, and that's it, right? And what does this form do? The disclosure form states that your fiduciary responsibility is to the tenant, right? In this case, right? You're representing the tenant, your fiduciary responsibility, your care is to them, right? You are working for them on their behalf and in their best interest, period. It doesn't say they have to work with you. It doesn't say what they're paying you for a fee or anything like that. This is just saying, hey, any property that I show to you, I'm representing you in your best interest, period, right? They sign it, you're good. This works for every property that you're showing to them. The last form is the anti-discrimination fair housing form, right? And this is also a 2-page form. The second page is, again, where you put your name of Weichert Properties. You write in on this line, we, the client's names, they sign and date it, right? All this form says is that you have, with your obligation under fair housing, inform them that there are many ways that they could be, their fair housing rights could be violated. And the front page of this form tells them who they can contact if they feel like that happens, right? If they feel like they've been discriminated against. All this is doing is making sure that you've given them that information. So it's a pretty quick form for them to sign. I've never had anyone not agree to sign this form. And that's it, right? It's a pretty simple process, right? You do a consultation with them, you gather the documents, you take them out to see properties, they apply for one, you help them with, making sure they sign everything right, collect the fees, and you have them as a client for life, right? So it's like a 6-step process, pretty simple, right? And this is the easiest way for you to start getting money in your pocket by finding tenants out there to help rent apartments to. If you say, I don't have anyone to work with, then, watch the Rent Hop video, watch the open listing landlord video and stuff like that. And you can get into the process of actually prospecting for prospective rental tenants. With that, I'd like to open it up for any questions that anyone might have. So feel free to ask anything, and I can also, I'll stop the share after we take any questions. Talia, Maurice, any questions?
I don't have any questions right now. If I think of anything, I will email you.
Okay, perfect. So I will.
Could you repeat the last thing you said about the leads, Tristan?
I'm sorry,
About
Tristan?
it. You just said something that I missed about if you don't have rental leads, how we might acquire them.
Sure. So you can sign up for the Weichert Rental Network. There's going to be a training on the training calendar for this month, and you can start getting rental leads from there. You can watch the video on the YouTube channel that's called Rent Hop and Open Listing Rentals, and you can start advertising open listing rentals on Rent Hop to get prospective rental tenants to work with.
That was the bit that I missed. Okay, got it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much.
Jason, I sent you a private message. You've seen it?
Yes, I do. I send out everything afterwards. So
Okay, I meant like a, like if you have like a PDF of that actual presentation rather than the video. 'Cause I know you send the video, like the YouTube video.
yeah, I always send, there's a PDF link on it.
Okay, right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of the day.